transparent, and that's what this role was set up to do, not to be a PR or not to certainly cover things up.
Right.
You know, and council doesn't expect that.
Right.
You know, I think they, you know, whether they like what I have to say or not, they appreciate the fact that we're bringing it up, because imagine if we waited 5 years, 10 years to look at some of these, you know, sports center, how much worse it could have been.
Right,
Okay, so whether they like it or not, you know, from our perspective as a CPA, as the auditor, is just to be transparent. You know, I'm not management, I'm not the council, I don't make management decisions. We bring them the information to make the decision.
Good. Dan?
Okay, and it's unfair that you get all these questions because you are the auditor. There should be a process in place where the city, somebody in the city, and I don't know the organization that well, would see that art center is already depleted their reserves with no end in sight. So somewhere along the line, there should be controls in place to manage it before you do it.
Absolutely.
So my question to you is, you get to see everything that's bad, and I saw your recommendations, you know, best practices for ROI and all this other stuff. I've worked at Northrop Grumman, and I tell you one thing, we never invested in building planes, let's example, unless there was an ROI developed for that project. And your recommendations are good, but they are out there already. There are best practices to do everything you said for those last two items. And I think it's unfair to you to do all this work. You're transparent. I give you so much credit to be able to stand here and say this, because their city council should be the ones held for those two areas that we built. It's $70 million, and it's flushing down the toilet. We're not making money. Sandler Center, you know, it's like Congress appropriating billions of dollars for the Kennedy Center. I mean, okay?
Yes.
So my question to you is, you look at the first the two festivals. You got money set aside, and then you got in kind, and then, so like Parnell, whatever his name is. Pharrell. He's getting paid to run that thing from our money. And he's getting paid to have a safe event from our money. So when you do the audit, do you look at how much his return on investment is for nothing?
Yes. Well, to run his event is a multi-million. Something in the Live Nation, something in the water, they lost money. And we're not privy, and that's not our money. And it's a proprietary, they didn't share it with us. But we work closely with the promoters. They didn't make any money, okay? He does it because, you know, I'm sure he could write it off. This is his hometown, you know, he wants to have a marquee event in his name. So what we're concerned about is the $2 million that we appropriated. And what did we do? Because that $2 million isn't going to run that festival.
Right.
You know, that's a $20 million expense.
Okay, so the bottom line is, when you look at our money,
Exactly.
how well it's spent,
Exactly.
and what's not spent goes in the tip fund.
That's right.
And I guess one question Dee had was, so we had $730,000 of in-kind donations.
That's right.
Security, trash, blah, blah, blah.
That's right.
So that money, if you look at the delta from the $2 million,
Yep.
does not repay that in-kind donation. I mean, seriously, if you look at it, the in-kind donation is a lot more than the delta between $2 million and the 1.8, right?
Yes.
So it's like,
Yeah, and if you
that's extra things you did all the percentages in the tip fund and all that stuff. That's extra money that we pay for, that has police officers,
That's right.
EMS, trash people doing things not in our communities, but in this festival. And you know, if they lost money, they lost money.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. But I'm just saying, to spend taxpayer money for no benefit to the taxpayer. And if you look at the people who bought tickets, I bet you about 80% of them are not Virginia Beach residents. They're people outside.
Yes.
And okay, so they generated $970,000 in taxes. That's good. But it doesn't, the things don't net out, I mean, in my mind.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. That's the argument. And if you talk to the various
But thank you very
stakeholders,
much for what you do, because my experience, when an auditor comes in, it's rear view mirror look, and if management is not doing something to fix it, by the next time you do an audit, you should put in your audit that the city council or the treasurer or whoever failed to implement these things. Because there are standards out there already for everything you recommend.
absolutely,
Okay.
and I,
Vic,
and I agree with you.
Vic's got the next question.
Very quickly, how is it decided what projects you look into?
Okay, that's a very good question. So as I mentioned, as the city auditor, I am independent, I am appointed. So by city ordinance, which is in the charter, spells out the responsibilities of the city auditor. I determine, and I follow a process of what's going to go in the audit plan. So it's not, obviously, you know, we talk with the stakeholders, management, we try to align our risk with city council's risk, but ultimately what gets audited and what's in our audit plan, I determine that.
Okay, so when I went before city council and said I want an audit on something in the water, you had that in the works anyway?
Yeah, obviously. So these big events, the election, stormwater, CIP events, those are aligning with housing. Those are aligning with the council priorities. And so if council priorities are over here and I'm auditing over here, there's a disconnect. Okay, so I need to be in alignment with where the risks are, council's concerns, and risks within the city.
So they can't tell you what to audit.
Okay, so because I have 11 bosses, if councils dictated the audit plan, they would be saying, Lyndon audit this, Lyndon audit that. So to prevent that, I have the final say. Now obviously, if they want, and they have done it in the past, if they want an audit that is not on the annual schedule, they have to pass a resolution. So they need to come up with 6 people and say, Lyndon, we want you to audit this area. One of the very last times that was utilized, the May 31st mass shooting. Okay? I don't know if some of you remember, and you know, never in my wildest dreams as the city auditor, that would fall on me in regards to overseeing the independent investigation. But that was done by resolution. When we've had issues with credit cards, you know, it's rarely used because I try to align my audit schedule with their priorities and risk. But if they do want to, they would have to pass a resolution. That way I'm not put into a, you know, a position where 1 or 2 council members are saying,
Okay.
audit this, audit that.
Okay, Robert, and then Teresa, you'd be the last one, because it's after 8 o'clock.
Lyndon, have you ever done a spreadsheet on all of the cumulative debt, let's say from the convention center, when we tore down the pavilion, there was still about $3 million left on the old pavilion, and that wasn't paid off. From the very beginning to all of these projects, up to now, the Atlantic Park, what debt or how much bonding issues that were done, and then the performance on the operating expenses over these years, and the total amount of red ink that's been accumulative, like you would any corporate buyout for any business, Sears, whatever. They want to go back 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, and see the numbers. And those numbers have never been released, to my knowledge, of all the cumulative debt and the red ink, like the Norfolk Light Rail.
Yeah, no, I certainly haven't done that, but I've reviewed some of the debt spreadsheets from finance, from our budget department, obviously, whenever they're issuing debt, they have to track that. But in regards to going back and tracking performance, you know, that type of due diligence has not been done.
Yeah, because one of the projects, I can't remember which, it was $13,000 operating and personnel, $108,000. I'm trying to remember which one it was at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I remember when they did the march from Mount Trashmore for Black Lives Matter, it was $149,000 that we paid, they didn't have to pay, just for that one event to march from Trashmore to the town center. So some of these numbers are suspect, and it's not you.
Yeah, that was the Beachit, 13,000 in operating, 108,000 in personnel.
So I mean, that whole event didn't even come up on the operating expenses as that one march from Mount Trashmore to town center. So just saying.
Yeah.
Okay,
None of this has reflected in your performance at all, so don't get me wrong.
Teresa?
My question is, how much does 45 days of voting cost the city?
That would probably be a better question for the registrar's office. A lot of that is dictated by state code, the city charter in regards to what they need to do. I agree, you know, with, you know, if you love elections, Virginia Beach is the place for you. If you hate elections, Virginia Beach, seems like every other month there's an election, special election, recount, and so forth. But yeah, a lot of that is obviously dictated and out of the control of, you know, certainly management or the council. But, you know, obviously there's a cost to it. You know, we just had an election Tuesday, and it takes people staffing each of the various precincts, as well as the staff from the registrar's office that's working, you know, and some of them are working overtime, and they bring in a lot of contracted temporary workers. So it's not cheap.
No, it's not cheap. Can I have a big round of applause for
Yeah.
Lyndon